Welcome to the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast. Salt Strong has been helping saltwater anglers catch more fish in less time for 10 years and is now the largest and most trusted saltwater fishing community in America. If you want to catch more saltwater fish, then keep listening. If you want to speed up your fish catching results even faster, then join the private insider community at saltstrong.com. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Trout and redfish behavior in Texas. This is a Texas Guides edition. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again with the podcast. This is a special one. Scott Ray, who is one of our resident coaches for Texas, interviewed Captain Justen Simpton of Sunrise Fishing, and this was great. I will say at the beginning, they're just kind of talking about background, so don't think you're not getting value towards the middle and all throughout the whole end. This thing is just chock full of awesome intel. And even if you don't live in Texas, I got a ton out of this myself. So enjoy this interview with Scott Ray and Captain Justen Simpton of Sunrise Fishing, all about trout and redfish in Texas. Enjoy.
What's going on, Salt Strong Nation? This is Scott Ray. I am the fishing coach for the Texas coast, and I've got my friend Justen here. He's a guide on the Galveston area. Justen, you want to introduce yourself? Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hey, how y'all doing? Good to meet y'all and hope to meet some of y'all in person. I have a guide service here in Galveston called Sunrise Fishing, but that's with an O. So it's S-O-N, like the Son of God, and that's actually what the name is for. So it's S-O-N Rise, one word, fishing. And the website is sunrisefishing.com. And then I have Sunrise Fishing on Facebook, and that's the name of my guide service. And so, like Scott said, you mentioned Galveston. I was born on Galveston Island. Okay. And then, we moved inland a little bit, close to where I live now, but my mom's parents actually lived on Offutt's Bayou in Galveston. Some of y'all might have heard of that, or you can look it up. Great place to fish, by the way.
It is.
And so they lived on Offutt's Bayou, and then my dad's parents, they lived across the ferry in Galveston, Port Bolivar, and their home and their land actually extended all the way to the Intercoastal Waterway.
But you pretty much grew up on the water, grandparents on both sides.
Both sides, yep. Yep.
Very cool. And you're operating the guide service right now out of Galveston. You venture outside of there. What all base systems are you kind of covering?
So I'm fortunate enough to be right smack dab in the middle of Galveston Bay, because you have Galveston, right, and then you have Upper Galveston Bay, which would be like Baytown, Trinity,
right.
Then you got West and East Bay, which I do fish. East Bay is just, a lot of us guides, we get in our routines, and whatever works, we're gonna stick to it.
Absolutely.
So I mainly do West Galveston Bay.
Pretty water over there. The customers like that pretty water, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. West of the Causeway, but lately part of my tour will go as in where we fish. I'll take people a little bit east of the Causeway, but that's where most of my Galveston trips are. Sometimes, depending on the clients and just the conditions and stuff, we'll go to the jetties when the conditions are right, because some people like to go to the jetties and they're like, hey, I've never been to the jetties, so we can go to the jetties. Mm-hmm. And I have a 2.5 boat with a decent hull. It's got a good V hole in the front, but I can get that thing really shallow. I'll put it this way: I can get it so shallow I can't stop, and I'll have to stop in a hole, and then I can use the trolling motor and go. And I could actually take that boat with the trolling motor and fish in a foot of water, 22 and a half foot boat.
That's important up here.
Exactly. Yeah, it handles the deep really well. So, but yeah, mainly West Galveston Bay when it comes to Galveston. And it's the same distance drive for me to go up to Baytown, which would not be the Trinity side, but it'd be, I guess you just call it Baytown, the Upper Galveston Bay, which connects to the San Jacinto River, and you got the ship channel. And so you got, up there, you got, same in Galveston, one of the things that's really good about our fishery is we have the ship channel. You got the barge channel, which has maybe up to 20 foot of water, but we got the ship channel, which has up to 60 feet of water. So the fish can take refuge in there if anything happens. So
Yeah.
I
Too
think
hot or too cold, the freezes, things like that. So you kind of mentioned you go out to the jetties and you go way up in Baytown and stuff. I mean, you tailor this seasonal as well as I'm sure client request, right? You pretty much tailor this to what your client wants.
Yep, pure, but we go into the marsh, the actual marsh. I actually like marsh fishing, and I've even done. I'm confident enough at times to, believe it or not, in that boat. Probably on a lower boat traffic day, sight cast reds.
Mhm.
So we've done that too in the boat I have. So a variety. And another thing that I started doing, just so everybody's aware, is I offer exclusive topwater fishing trips, and we're going for bigger trout, and we might accidentally get redfish. Hey, not a bad to have, but we usually get bigger trout, and we can get up to like the one I have in the background there. That's a 28-inch trout on the topwater and a foot and a half of water.
Very
So it's middle of the summer. So I do topwater trips as well.
So that's fairly advanced angling, topwater specific trips, and then so that would be catering to more that type of client that would be requesting that. You also bring out some rookies too, huh? Some beginners, and you do bait trips as well, or
Yeah. Most of the clientele is and even the repeats is bait, and I didn't really come up using croaker. Croaker's really popular. And so I really don't. If for whatever reason, if someone wanted to go with me and I love to throw croaker, hey, we'll get some croaker. But 99% of my trips are literally shrimp, just good old shrimp and popping cork. Which, as we talk further, you'll see how that it can be very exciting. Some people think shrimp and popping cork fishing is boring, but that's mainly what I do, and then artificial, just artificials.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of said you cover basically all of Galveston Bay, east, west, north, Trinity, all of that, and you hit the jetties. Do you ever do any freshwater stuff?
I do not. I actually,
Me neither.
believe it or not, I grew up doing, not in a boat, but from land, doing a lot of bass fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Crappie fishing, but I've never used the boat in freshwater.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you fish down here on the coast, and it's just by proxy you end up, there's so many bass, it's so available, right? But back to the saltwater stuff. So I was asked about your specialties, but man, you kind of covered all of that already. You do, it's so broad. You're doing topwater stuff. You're doing shrimp under the popping cork. Do you have any maybe springtime taxes? We're pretty much full spring patterns now. And do you have any kind of springtime tips, springtime tactics? Of course, without giving away spots that you can help us with.
Well, it's a transition period, and for the fishing that we've been doing, the trout specifically that we've been catching, they're kind of moving off of, at least where I'm at, because I don't want someone to hear and be like, "Oh, it's not true. We're catching them on reefs over here and over there."
Right.
But they're kind of moving off the reefs a little bit more, and they're in the spawning mode. They're in that early spawning mode, and we're seeing that when we're filleting the fish. And they're following the gazillion little glass minnows and shad fry, right? And wherever they're at, they're going to follow them. And they're real fat right now. Almost all the redfish, no matter what length they are, and the trout that we were catching lately, they all have pot bellies, right? And so that's their main thing. And it can be difficult when they're keyed in on the fry because it's so easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so
cereal, they're taking mouthfuls of 100 fry at a time, right? Instead of attacking one specific, bait fish. So that makes it difficult to target. You have any tips or tactics for that?
the shrimp and popping cork and the popping it. And I think the way I think of it is, so since those fish, the fry, they even know in a sense, they know that they're in danger, right? So they're on the top. And so the fish are coming up and eating them. And what I've seen is when we get the live shrimp below, then they're going to go for what's below and easier in a sense, even though it is easy for them to get the fry. What I've noticed is we'll come up on redfish this time of year and we'll see them boiling, and we'll throw the shrimp and popping cork in there, and that shrimp will get below all the fry, and they'll just eat it up. And you got to wonder if they're like us. I'm so tired of eating these fry. I want to eat something else.
I thought that too. You can fill up on steak, and then you still got room for that cheesecake, right? So I figured that may be something to do with it too, and it could be also that you're getting it below that school, and it's literally in their face, right? And it's kind of like, there it is. That could be it too. But I like that tactic. That's a good tip for everybody. So basically, you would run a little longer leader. Is kind of what you're saying on your popping cork to make sure you're underneath that shad school, right?
Yeah, and I'm big about so the places I take people, I know the topography, if you want to call it, pretty well. I actually know where some of the underwater rocks are. I know how far the rocks come out underwater, and all that to say, I'll adjust the leader accordingly. One thing I saw, like back in the day, when I used to fish lights a lot, I saw how the fish set up one night. It was like 5 foot. I mean, you could see a quarter on the bottom was 5 foot, and I saw all your. It's just kind of like us too. Like there's things that, which I'll talk about in a second, but it's kind of like how people are. You have like the kids and the children just going in a frenzy, going crazy. Kind of towards the top. Look at everything that moves. They're looking at. They're chasing. They're full of all this energy. And then we would see the bigger fish, sometimes in schools together, 2 or 3, with the trout below all those, and they're kind of waiting and just chilling. They're being real precise,
more reserved and more cautious about how they feed. Right? Yep. They didn't get big by being crazy and just exposing themselves.
Right, and the meal that they're going to eat, they'd rather spend a good amount of energy and get a big meal than just going up and down and getting glass minnows over and over and over again.
More efficient with how they eat.
Yep. And that was back in the day when I was kayaking, and I remember, that was years ago. That's kind of when, and you can apply this to yourself too. That's when you really start thinking. For me, that was really when I really started thinking about fishing and like how they set up, and and another thing,
analyzing fish behavior.
Actually analyzing the behavior. And another story with that real quick was when I saw those bigger fish on the bottom, I had a hard plastic. It was a Yozuri with a bill, 4 inches long, and I would actually reel it really fast. If you saw me reeling it, you would actually you would look at me and be like, "What are you doing?" It looked like I'm reeling as hard as I can. And what was happening in about 4 to 5 foot of water is I was getting it right off the bottom, and I was reeling it really fast. And so, a light bulb turned on, and I said, because these fish would smash it, right? When I would reel it really fast, you wouldn't even set the hook. I never set the hook because you're reeling as fast as you can. And since it's going fast, they can't.
It kind of sets the hook on itself.
Yeah, they can't. Well, yeah, and they can't try to kill it. They can't investigate it. Because it's going so fast, they have to fully commit. And so when they fully commit to it, they're going to nail it. And I found that that brought the size of the amount of fish out of 10 fish that were, upper size went way. We hardly caught any dinks because it was getting below them, and they would have to fully commit to it. So when they fully commit to something, they have to hit it really hard. So they're just going to go all the way. They're going to try to get it in their mouth, and they're going to nail it.
They don't have time. They don't have time to decide they don't want to hit it.
Yeah, like the times
Commit.
where we've all been fishing with lures and they short strike it or bump it, and you're like, oh man. When you reel it really, really fast, they have to fully commit to it.
That's some great advice. You guys listen up right there. If they're short striking you, Captain Justen Simpton says make it faster, and they have to commit. And I tend to agree with that. That sounds good. So you have any other springtime tactics? I mean, we're coming into spring now, and we kind of talked about the pre-spawn and, so this trout are headed out to the surf, right? So eventually we're going to be, they're going to be in the surf at jetties and things like this, right? You have any advice for the upcoming pattern that we're going to see in the next, month or so?
Yeah, I think what it's centered around, I kind of put the surf in its own category.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the things it's centered around is the spawn.
Yeah.
And so I think, and here's something that we often don't think about is they want to have the best and most nutrients they can have to have the best spawn.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna load up on those fry. They're gonna be feeding extra heavy, feeding continuously because they want to have a healthy spawn.
Mm-hmm.
So their aggressiveness, their feeding activity is going to go up, and they're gonna go a little shallower. A lot of trout like to spawn in the marsh. From what I understand, they can spawn in all kinds of places, but we'll see them be more aggressive and see more numbers. And one of the great things is bigger fish. So we have Texas, especially down south and here too, from Galveston down to Corpus all the way down to South Texas. It's waiting in the colder months for big trout. Well, there's a springtime pattern, which a lot of guys do with croaker, but I try to do with topwater. There's a springtime pattern all the way into early summer, actually, for these the big trout. Now, I will tell you, they're not going to weigh as much, but the length is still pretty good, and there's nothing like having them explode at topwater. Not that they won't hit topwater all year, because they definitely will, but it's just I'm just making the point that there's another pattern besides the waiting in the colder months for big trout.
Oh, absolutely. Spring is ideal for big trout. Matter of fact, my PB came in the spring. My top 3 have come in the spring. So yeah, the topwater right now. So spring being aggressive fish and stuff like that, you would say that maybe this would be a good time for a beginner to throw lures for the first time. Maybe easier to have some success with lures for the first time. Is that kind of, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think May and early June is really good for artificials, and would be a good time for beginners to do that, because when spring first starts and all those fries show up, there are times where you can throw every lure in the box at them, and they're just gorging on those fry, and they won't hit. That
was me 3 days ago.
Yep.
Everywhere. And, I didn't have any bait. I'm all artificial, and it was a struggle. They were keyed in on the fry, and it was a struggle. And so, yeah, but once the fry get a little bigger and they're starting to hit individual bait fish, then you think the lures that's the time, May, June is what you're saying?
For me, I've definitely noticed it's even better with artificials in May and June.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's specific to our area, of course. You guys somewhere else, it may be a little bit different, but so what kind of areas would we be looking for the trout right now? What kind of bottom, what kind of depth or whatever? Don't give away spots yet again, but where are we finding trout right now, or where are you finding trout right now?
Oh, let's see. A little bit, close to rocks, which, we can talk about rocks and features and stuff whenever there's a good time. But it seems like I said, it seems like they're moving into more, not necessarily marshy, but like, so some of your kind of like, I want to say lagoon, but we don't really have lagoons here. I'm trying to, kind of areas that have like small little beach, sand.
So sand and shell bottoms, sand and shell coves, things like that, right?
Yeah, and
What you're
like
saying?
some grass and kind of like marshy looking. Yeah, that's what I would say. Marshy looking areas. And but I think they're gonna come up more because here for us in Galveston, we don't really have, besides the beach, we don't have too much sand that's not mixed with a little bit of mud, right? So
It's nothing but mud and oysters back there.
yeah, so I think that they're coming more up on to like sandy areas than they were there since they're coming out of the colder month pattern.
Right. They definitely like that mud in the winter time, right? And then come up to the harder bottoms, you would say, right? Kind of what you're saying, a little bit harder bottoms, sand, shell, maybe even a clay, right? Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. And you were talking about fishing these rocks. So tell me about that tactic where you're fishing these rocks. These are large rocks, right? Like breakwater rocks, jetty rocks, that type of thing. Not small rocks. We're talking the big rocks that provide the structure, right? Ambush points. So tell me about that. How you're fishing those and that type of thing.
And I fish those the same year round. So like I would say rule number one is always look for safely, of course, always look for, whether you're on a kayak or a boat, look for deep water all the way up to the rocks, right? Because the fish, in trout some too, but mostly your redfish, and then your sheepshead are always going to be there, your drum, but they're always trying to pin something up against, something to make it easier.
Using that as a wall or like yeah. Like MMA fighter pinning somebody against the cage, right? That type of thing, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, and like the same with bulkheads and stuff. So if I know there's like a flat that goes up to rocks where it's like 1 feet, I don't even mess with it. I look for deep water that goes all the way up to the rocks, and then I'll look for another where it'll be like 5 to 6 foot, and then within let's say within a matter of 3 feet, it goes up to maybe 2 feet for about 3 feet, and then there's the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I really like so
steep drop offs, but
yeah,
chalks are the drop offs, right?
That are close to the rocks, and then where there's deep water up to rocks. Okay. And I apply this year round, everywhere. It doesn't just have to be rocks. It's kind of what you and I have talked about before. It's the strike zone.
Yes.
Since I take a lot of people fishing, they'll cast it, and I'll say, okay, once it gets that far off of the bulkhead or the rocks or whatever feature it is, I'll say, just go ahead and reel it in because you're wasting your time. And
because they're not fishing the feature now, right? Like they're pretty much fishing open water, and we may as well go fish the middle of the bay if you're just going to fish open water. The fish are in that feature or in the cove of that rock or whatever, right? And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and that can honestly be a matter of 5, even as little as 5 or 10 feet. I have people that get 5 feet out of the strike zone, and I tell them, hey, bring it in and do it again. And that can make the difference. And you have people out there right now. There's people out there that have boats, kayaks, or whatever. Hey, everybody's learning. That's fine. But I guarantee you, there's people who go fish things and they don't get it in the strike zone. And then their mind, they say, there's no fish here.
It's time to move, right? Yeah.
Move. And I'm telling you, I see it.
They just didn't fish the feature properly.
Yep. Almost every trip that I have, if you're out of the strike zone, but once you get in that strike zone, it is night and day.
Mm-hmm.
Night and day. And, then the depth of the leader, as it gets warmer, like the trash fish are back. Like they literally, for me, they just literally showed up in the last 2 weeks. I made a funny video about the first one of the year, and I had it hidden where you couldn't see it. And then we brought it up over the side of the boat, and it was a hard hit, and it was the first hard hit of the year because they're back. So for someone who uses a lot of shrimp, for the people I take, one of the things that I found is that you want to get it below the trash fish. Now, you're not always going to be able to escape the trash fish. Now, just use lures. Hey, then you can pretty much really avoid it. But
Yeah.
get the bait below the trash fish, especially in the hotter months, because
I'm mind that hot water.
yeah, there's a thermocline. Even in the hottest part of the summer, like you go 3 or 4, 5 foot down, and if you've ever swam in like a bayou or something in the summertime, or a place in saltwater that you can swim in, you can feel that. You'll feel that thermocline.
And it's so prominent in darker water. And we are very notorious in the Galveston Bay system for not having clean water.
Yeah, right.
So that does help push our fish down a little bit and make sure they stay in that cold zone, because there's a distinct cold zone, a distinct thermocline.
And they can chill. They can conserve. They don't have to get hotter than they want. And so when you make that deeper leader, at times you're going to get down into the thermocline where they're just chilling, and you'll be able to get to them easier, and they may not even want to go up to it's like if we're walking by and there's money on the ground, $1 on the ground or $2, we're going to pick it up if it's right in front of us. But if it's 5 feet in the air, we have to jump, and then we're like, who cares, But if you put it right in their path.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. And if they're hungry, they're like, hey, free, well, I'll take it. That literally happens.
So pretty much you're kind of explaining that, knowing the underwater geography, knowing the depth contours and stuff is key to finding these fish and honestly finding the strike zone, right? Like you touched on that. You can be in the right area and not be in that strike zone. And so knowing that, hey, there's that one big rock that's sitting off here, and there'll be that spot in between the rocks there that's going to be or how far off you need to be for that drop off. And so that underwater topography is key.
Yep. There's long reef systems that you probably won't see on the chart. Maybe some charts, I don't know, but they'll have indentations in the reef system. And if you can find like a 30-yard, 40-yard, hey, maybe 50-yard, square yard, 100 square yard, maybe area in a large reef system that has a valley, think of it like a valley in it, that really makes a difference for me, because they can take advantage of that.
Yes.
It's something you can do with reefs. And then there's also, if you think about it, when you got something like that, there can be little we've heard of eddies, right, where water will go around a corner, an edge, and make an eddy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's upwellings.
Mm-hmm.
So the tidal movement, and it's going like this, and then it comes to an incline, and it goes up. Well, guess what that water is going to do once it gets
swirls at the top?
It's going to make an incline. I could get there's places, there's like we have something called the diversionary, and I'm sure a lot of places have like a long canal like thing or whatever, and it has maybe a little entrance or something on the side. Well, there's a scenario where either a strong incoming or outgoing tide that's going in a straight line, but then you have a 90-degree cut off to the right, and you can actually watch the water. It's going past at the same time, but it's also turning into that cut. Well, guess what it does on that if it's coming in, I can't do it on here, but if it's making a right turn, okay, if it's making a right turn into a cut, guess what's going to be happening at that left quadrant? The water's
a swirl over there,
because that momentum wants to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And so make like a roll before it starts going forward into that cut. And then you can see some really cool things happen there, because the fish, these game fish, they know by feel, I guess, I don't know how, they know where types of features and stuff that disorient bait fish, basically. So it's like those things kind of like that about features It's like things that are abnormal that you figure out they can really help you.
Yeah. So again, that goes back to knowing that spotting the abnormalities under the water and stuff like that. We actually have an app, the Smart Fishing Spots app, that has two different layers. One of them is depth contours, and the other one is a shaded relief, which also shows depth contours as well. And it's very, very advanced. I'm not going to lie; it has shown me so much underwater stuff that I didn't know was there. And that is key right there to finding the fish and finding the right ambush points. And again, it goes back to ambush points and the current swirls, like you were just talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Justin. That's actually really good stuff, man. Pretty advanced angling right there.
Appreciate that. Yep, that's all. I just say fish features, and the reason why you keep going back to the same area. I mean, think about it like this: like you can once. It's a funny story that a place that I used to fish before I got into guiding, I got hung up all the time. Now, guess what? Guess what I knew? Okay, well, there's rocks here, there's rocks there, there's not rocks there. And so what I started doing, this sounds silly. I took an old classic bobber, right? I took a classic bobber, and you could do this with a slip cork, right? And then I knew from going there so much and getting hung up and then waiting to get that expensive lure out, right? I knew the features of the bottom. So I would adjust that cork according to the tide where I was right off the bottom, where I wouldn't get hung up. And I would catch fish. And people would, I wasn't like this awesome fisherman or whatever. There's this little spot, but it was kind of small. And I'll admit it crossed my mind, like, oh man, someone's fishing my spot, which is really not my spot. But
right. But all you needed was that type of spot, and that you could find that a lot of other places, right? That's kind of what you're saying. It's about fishing features.
But I remember being like, well, they're going to get hung up. And then, here's what a lot of people do is people would go there and get hung up a time or two and they get discouraged and they'd say, oh, this stinks. I'm going to go fish somewhere else. When instead you could, according to the tide, and you can remember by looking at this piece of concrete where the water line is, and you remember, oh, if it's here, it's this high, little details like that. Then you could say, maybe if I could fish it right above those rocks, I wouldn't get caught up, and I would catch fish. So
Right.
things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, it sounds like we've covered a lot already. But I mean, you have anything else you want to care to talk about before we go? I mean, I don't want to hold you all day. I'm sure you have another trip this evening, huh?
No, I just got back. And
Okay.
I don't have one. I have a pending trip, taking tomorrow off, and I have a pending trip Sunday, and we're going to try to time it with the rain, which can actually pay off too.
I just talked about that in my weekend game plan. We've got you've got the Soul Lunar lining up on the sunset, and that little system's coming right then too. So it'll be a pre-front bite at the Soul Lunar lining up. You've got I don't remember, it's the moonset, moonrise, or overhead or underfoot, but it was lining up with the sunset, and you got that front. Looks like Sunday evening is dynamite. Happy Easter, by the way.
You too. Yeah, I mean, as like parting advice, I would, fish features and go to a certain area that you like. I mean, if you can, for like a year. Bye, love y'all. For like a year, so you can get to know as many features as you can, because I guarantee you there is stuff that you don't know about that's there. There's guts you don't know about, so just look for differences. Everything else is this way, and just look for different features. And the features includes guts, features includes trend. That's another thing is, I was talking about the rocks and deep water up to the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I think transitions, where it's going from 2 feet or 2 rocks down to 5 feet, 5 to 6 feet.
Okay.
And so let's say it's coming up from the ship channel. It's coming up from, and you're not in the actual ship channel where you're not supposed to fish, but outside of the channel markers, right? And, it goes from 60 feet and makes its way up all the way to the rocks, where right at the rocks, it's maybe 2 or 3 feet.
Mhm.
But the rocks themselves, or 2 foot deep to 6 foot area, that range of transition is like what keeps me going. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Trout love that depth of anywhere from, I guess, 2 foot to 8 foot on those features. They really do. I've found the same. And I know a lot of top level guys are doing exactly like you were talking about before with, fishing a heavy jig and just to feel the bottom, get hung up a few times, and now you've learned some features. But like, again, we've got the technology now that can help you see those features underneath there, whether it's, something on your onboard on your onboard electronics on your boat, or the Smart Fishing Spots app on your phone, right? The phone is coming along. They've got some great apps, and I believe the Smart Fishing Spots app is really, really good. You really should check that out. It's got some bottom details that are eye-opening. They're like, wow, I didn't know that was there. I'll show you some on my phone. I'll show you some and let you check it out. You're going to want that app immediately. I promise you. It's so good. Say again.
Oh, I said that sounds cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, man, I guess we'll wrap it up, but I definitely want to get back out there again with you one day. I'll post some pictures of a trip I've been on with Captain Justen Simpton here, and this man stays on them. He's very consistent, and I wouldn't have brought him on if he wasn't. So, anyways, any parting words, brother? Happy Easter and whatever else. But I mean,
happy Easter.
Okay.
Thank the Lord for all He's given me and this opportunity and everything. And it's awesome. I love the fish, but I didn't see it this way. I didn't see myself doing it like this. So it's definitely
got a plan, brother.
Yeah, this is the busy season. So, but I do weekdays, and if any going to be in a position to just by chance, maybe it's a vacation week or just how your job works out, we can time it.
Okay.
Conditions, and we can try to get some good conditions for topwater. But I fish during the week too, so
sounds great.
A lot of my weekends are going to start getting stacked up, but I have weekdays available too.
Well, that's how spring is. It's the busiest season for pretty much all of Galveston, whether it's fishing or anything else, right? But yeah, man. Well, where can we find you again? Hit us with that one more time. Sunrisefishing.com, and that's SON as in Son of God, right?
Yep.
Sunrise. Same thing on Facebook. It's Sunrise Fishing, right?
Sunrise with an O, fishing.com, and then just Sunrise Fishing, 2 words on Facebook. Yep.
And 4. Okay. Justen, we're going to have to get out there pretty soon, brother. I really appreciate the interview and you sharing all you shared from beginner tactics to that advanced stuff we were talking about, man. I really appreciate all this. And I guess enjoy that Easter, and y'all go get them, huh?
Hey, thanks, man. We sure will.
You too. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Want more fishing tips, shortcuts, and tools so you can catch more fish per trip? Then head over to saltstrong.com now and join the movement. Tight lines, and thanks for listening.